Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Hello, everybody. It is me, your host of the Maverick News Freedom Reporters show, Brendan Kennedy. It's good to be here with you today. I will be flying solo as Rick Walker is currently out on errands today, but that's okay. We're still going to have a good time with a good show. I do have lots of different engaging content to bring to you tonight. There's a number of things that we're going to have to clear out of the way. First and foremost, happy Mother's Day to all you mothers out there. It is very blessed to have everybody. Parenting is such a huge thing. And, you know, we couldn't absolutely do anything in this world without our mothers. So my hat's off to you ladies. And thank you for all that you do. Whether it's keeping your house together and making sure that you can raise and feed our children for tomorrow. And I'm definitely very happy to have you along with us. So, with that being said, I want to talk about this a little bit quickly here, as it is Mother's Day, and I feel that that's something that's very important. So let's just take a look at something that I wanted to talk about. This has been in the news for a while here. So, there is a huge culture war going on at this point in time where it seems like just a few years ago we were overtly worried about radical feminists, but now those people have all disappeared. They're all gone now. You have governments all around the world who are saying, oh, there's no such thing as mothers, there's birthing people. There's all kinds of institutions. There's institutions in Scotland, and they run midwife schools there, and they have removed all kinds of language out of their documentation, out of their textbooks, erasing women. Now, I think that's a bit of a problem because, I mean, biology dictates women are mothers. Now, it's overwhelmingly always the case, but this is a huge disgrace, I think. And where are all these people who, not so long ago, were all about women's rights and solidifying things for women, but I am just baffled by how this is happening or what's going on with this. Everything that is, well, typically, I mean, we've all seen Apple has come out with emoticons for pregnant men. Yeah, anyway, this is absolutely stupid. We all know that mothers are important. And I wanted to take a moment to say thank you to all the mothers out there, and that you're deserving and worthy of a place in our culture, our society, in our world. And it's absolutely ridiculous that it's something that the left want to just chuck in the garbage, get rid of. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you, Trish Hendricks. It said, continued attack on women and feminine energy. They don't want us to rise, but we are women, so we will rise anyway. That's exactly what I'm talking about. This is a continued attack on women and feminine energy. This is something that, I mean, masculinity has certainly been something that's been a target for a very long time, especially by early feminist waves. There's a lot of talks about toxic femininity, and toxic masculinity. But now they seem to have dropped that from the narrative, and it is all after getting rid of language around femininity. It's ridiculous. We all know it's ridiculous. The populations and people that this is pandering to are so small, and it's ridiculous. Anyway, there's not a whole lot I really want to touch on with that other than we need to make sure that we call out bullshit when we see it, and call your mother if you haven't today and wish her a happy Mother's Day because, man, it's like I said, absolutely important. So there's a lot of things that have happened today and that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about the Ontario election today and some of the things that it is quite disturbing. We've said on the show before that the last election in Canada was the referendum on the thing in the arm. But this election in particular in Ontario to determine who is going to be the next premier for Americans out there or people around the world. Premier is essentially someone who is like a governor of a state, but in this case it will be a premier of Ontario. So I'm quite disturbed by some of the things that I'm seeing. And quite frankly, I am worried about what's going to happen after June 2nd. I feel that this is going to be a direct assault on our kids. And in either case, we will take a look and see what our friend, the Liberal leader of Ontario, is going to be talking about. So we'll check in with him. There's lots of things going on in and around Ukraine. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has done an unannounced visit there. And so we'll be checking in on a speech that he made just a little bit ago. Oh, Rick Walker's absolutely fine, everybody. Please don't worry about Rick. He's just taking the day off. He'll be back tomorrow. It is all business related. It is not, there's no problem. So don't be worried. Alicia Smith and everybody else, Rick Walker doing just fine. So not only have we had that, but we'll find some other stuff to talk about as well. But in the meantime, let's take a moment to discuss why I am absolutely terrified about this election in Ontario. So it was just yesterday, the leader, Stephen Del Duca, for the Ontario Liberal Party, who is seeking to become the Premier of Ontario, he made a press conference with a statement. So I'll just let this roll before I offer some commentary. We're just going to listen to a little bit of it.
How important it is as we head towards the next school year to make sure that all of our kids and our frontline education workers are healthy and safe at all times. To make sure that we are listening to the very best medical advice, which is what Ontario Liberals have done throughout this COVID journey. What we've always urged Doug Ford to do as well, to listen to the science table, to listen to the incredible people that we have working on the front lines, nurses like Tyler Watt, nurses, doctors, and so many others who have the expertise and have been giving advice to this government from day one, advice that far too often Doug Ford ignored. So today I'm here to announce that if elected, Ontario Liberals will make the COVID-19 vaccine for kids part of the universal roster of vaccines that are required for kids to attend publicly funded schools right across the province of Ontario. Now, some of you will know, I know that I can certainly remember the yellow card that had the list of the vaccines that I received. My wife and I were talking about this as we drove here today. We still have, of course, the yellow cards of our daughters, their immunization record. The legislation known as the Immunization of the Schools Pupils Act was introduced and passed back in 1990 a number of years ago, and there are 9 existing vaccines in that roster of universal required vaccines. As I said, we will add the COVID-19 vaccine to that list. And we're going to do that because the science is settled on this. We know that vaccines help our kids. And we also know that in the youngest category, the kids who are ages 5 to 11 in this province, that as we stand here today, only about 40% of those eligible kids have received both doses of their vaccine. We know, depending on where you are in the province, that there are many kids who are still not attending schools for a variety of reasons, including COVID. We want to change that. We want to set up our kids for success. It's why we're going to shrink classrooms and put a hard cap of 20 on our class sizes. It's why we're going to invest in 5,000 new special education professionals in schools right across Ontario. It's why we're going to hire up 1,000 new mental health professionals in schools across this city and across Ontario, because we know our kids have suffered. Their mental health care has suffered with the isolation and being away from.
These isolationist policies that he's complaining about have been basically cheerleaded by this guy. There is all kinds of horror that I am dreaming up about with this situation. To mandate something of this nature on our children in Ontario. And this is something that applies to everybody. We should all be horrified by what this man is looking at doing. So this is something that is going to ultimately further remove medical autonomy for parents to make decisions on what we know to be a clinical trial. We've all seen lots of things that we know this is not 110% safe. I'm absolutely, one of the big questions I have about this is this appealing to the citizens of Ontario and the people who live here? Is this something that they really want? And it may be worth noting, or it may even be interesting to find out how much of Ontario would actually root for something like this. This is this takes away more medical autonomy. This takes away a lot of parents' rights, and this is going to ultimately end up hurting the children. With any parents who do not wish to go through with it, and we know the medical establishment is probably not going to provide anybody with an exemption for this, so kids will be excluded from school curriculums and school time. And most of all, we definitely know that our children are not at risk with this particular incident. And so this guy is very clearly, and I've talked about this. I talk about this quite a bit in the past. That, and Rick Walker has even stated it best. If this guy gets elected, then the citizens of Ontario are going to have masks crazy glued to their face, and nobody's going to be able to, we're never going to get out of this. It's in his best interest to keep this whole thing going. Rick Walker, there is a private chat. So in either case, Ontario has a big decision coming up, and I felt that this was very important to highlight with people. So we need to make sure that this June 2nd in Ontario, people go out and vote. and people make sure that they vote with not only freedom for themselves, but freedom for their fellow citizens. And so that's why I thought it was very important to highlight this guy. And I'm quite concerned. But moving on. Moving on. We're going to talk a little bit now about Justin Trudeau. So Justin Trudeau has made a quote-unquote unannounced visit to Ukraine, and has also highlighted a number of things that are going to be happening there. There is no secret, obviously, that Canada has provided Ukraine with unlimited weapons stock, unlimited credit card, unlimited amounts of spending, unlimited amounts of support. So Justin Trudeau went to Ukraine today, and we will just play a little bit of that speech to see what some of the things he had to comment on.
Thank you very much. It is so great to be here with you, President Zelensky, in your beautiful city, my friend. Vladimir, your inspiration, and as we recognize the service and the inspiration that so many of the members of the Ukrainian Armed Forces have stood up with, one cannot but recognize your extraordinary leadership that is inspiring Ukrainians, but inspiring people around the world about how one fights for what is right, fights for one's country, fights for one's future. Thank you for all your inspiration, my friend. I'm glad to be here today with our Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly to reaffirm Canada's unwavering support for Ukraine, for its people, for democracy. In Canada today, we also celebrate Mother's Day. So I want to express my admiration and respect for all the mothers of Ukraine, those who have lost their children in terrible conflict, but also those who step up on the front lines with the courage and ferocity that only mothers can give in fighting for a future for their kids. We began our day today with a visit to Irpin, where I witnessed firsthand the brutality of Russia's illegal war, of neighborhoods battered, homes destroyed, but I also witnessed the resilience of Ukrainians as people rebuild, as people stood, even outnumbered, 8-1, to defend not just their homes, but the entire city behind them of Kyiv. It was a true inspiration to see people step up to defend their lives, defend their community, defend a bright future for themselves, for the families in the country they love. It is clear that Vladimir Putin is responsible for heinous war crimes. There must be accountability. Canada will support Ukraine as you seek justice for your people who Russia is killing and brutalizing. Since Russia's full-scale invasion 73 days ago, Canada and Canadians continue to stand by your side. Our countries are deeply connected. Canada has the second largest Ukrainian community in the world outside of Ukraine. We've also welcomed thousands of Ukrainians since the beginning of the war, and we will continue to do so. Over the past years, our military has trained well over 30,000 Ukrainian soldiers. We will continue to do the work of being there for you with whatever we can, with whatever you need. The President and I also just finished excellent meetings today to strengthen our deep relationship in meeting together with my fellow G7 leaders. On this anniversary of Victory Day in Europe, standing strong against Putin's illegal war and in defense of democracy, human rights and international law is as important as it ever has been. We will continue together to impose severe sanctions, eliminate the dependency on Russian energy, and fight disinformation. We're also working together to address the global challenges that Putin has created, especially around food security. Since Putin launched his full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Canada has done everything we can to support and rallied our allies to coordinate the strongest possible response. We imposed crippling sanctions on Russia's economy, including financial systems, the central bank, the oligarchs, and the enablers in Belarus. We've delivered a significant amount and range of different types of military equipment. We've delivered financial support so your government can continue to operate, as well as humanitarian aid in country and across Europe, while also, of course, welcoming refugees to Canada. Well, today, I'm happy to be announcing more important sorts for Ukraine. This morning, Ambassador Larisa Galatza and I raised the Canadian flag at our embassy here in the capital. She and her team will resume operations here in Kiev. Building on our recent announcement of the provisions of LAVs and heavy artillery, today I'm announcing more military assistance, drone cameras, satellite imagery, small arms, ammunition, and other supports, including funding for demining operations. Even if the dog barked at me, we're helping fund that. We're providing $25 million to the World Food Program for food security in Ukraine. We'll be removing trade tariffs on all Ukrainian imports coming to Canada for the next year. And we're bringing forward new sanctions on 40 Russian individuals and 5 entities, oligarchs, close associates of the regime, the defense sector, all of them complicit in Putin's war. We're also announcing new funding to help support and protect women's organizations, human rights defenders, civil society, and more. Ce matin, l'ambassadrice Larisa Galatza et moi avons hissé le drapeau canadien à notre ambassade ici dans la douanier sur les importations. Il a sous-estimé la résilience. Stands proud and that will stand for years, decades, and centuries to come as a continued symbol against tyranny. Putin and his accomplices will fail. Ukraine will prevail. Slava Ukraini. Героям слава. Героям слава.
Дуже дякую, шановні колеги журналісти. Є можливість для кількох запитань. Будь ласка, Global News Canada.
Global News. Global News Canada, please raise your hand once again in order to be able to ask your question.
Hello, Mr. Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister, I'm going to ask you your question first, and I have been encouraged to remind you to please also answer in French. You reopened Canada's embassy today. Why did that take so long? And when you were out in Irpin, specifically, what did you see that you haven't seen over the last 70-odd days that stuck with you? And Mr.
First of all, it was an incredible honor today to be at the Canadian Embassy in Kiev, raising the flag once again. It had been since mid-February that flag had been brought down, that the embassy had been closed. So to be there with our ambassador, not just to raise the flag, but to...
Well, you get the point. So, talk about a softball question from a journalist. Like, oh, how come you didn't do that sooner? Should have been there like days ago. Let's talk about some of the highlights of what he said. So Canada has supposedly trained some 300,000 Ukrainian troops. This has been a span since, I think we've had our training regime over there since just before 2017 and then around 2017. We've had experts on the show who had talked about this and that. There really isn't any difference whatsoever between a NATO regiment and these Canadian trained troops. They're interchangeable. You could tell that we've been We've been harassing Russia on their doorstep for years and years and years. And yesterday, people pointed out that in Russia tomorrow, May 9th, they're going to have their Victory in Russia Day. And that they're quite concerned about Putin will do. I find this very interesting that Justin Trudeau plans to visit Ukraine on this time period. There also is talks that they'll be removing any and all tariffs and taxes that may be involved between trading between Russia and Canada. But it's also important to point out that Justin Trudeau had stated once again heinous war crimes. I don't know if he's in a... I don't think Justin Trudeau is in a position where he's able to actually say that sort of thing. And clearly, when he is there, this is something that's going to be a high security event. He's not really going to be able to go anywhere. He's not going to be able to see anything. He probably goes to the embassy and then leaves right after. They did raise the flag today at the Canadian embassy in Ukraine. And there is footage of Justin Trudeau doing that. I don't think that he should be within several feet of a Canadian flag, but that's just my opinion. Russia has to be watching all of this go down. Like, they have to know. This is more poking of the bear. We still, to this day, do not see anything about peace talks coming from the Prime Minister or Canada trying to take some sort of position that is going to bolster peace in the region. Which, if you ask me, shows a complete disregard for the human life that has suffered pretty gravely there. Let's listen to a little bit more, and then we'll move on to the next thing.
Reopen the embassy. She'll be there working every day from now on, is an important symbol, not just of Canada's steadfast friendship with Ukraine, but of the incredible resilience and heroism of the Ukrainian people who ensured that this city did not fall and that we can resume the work together we have on building a better future for all. The fact that the Canadian flag once again will be flying over the streets of Kyiv is a very good thing indeed. When I was in Irpin this morning, I saw just how much Ukrainians can do standing against a force 8 times as large as they were in defending their homes, defending their land, of pushing back against the Russian illegal invasion. It is an inspiration.
The illegal invasion.
But I also saw the work that we're going to have to do all together to rebuild those communities, to rebuild an even stronger future for Ukraine, and that's exactly what we would be there for. Ce matin, j'ai été très touché de pouvoir hisser le drapeau canadien devant la...
That's an interesting point that this thing isn't even anywhere close to being over at this, like, by any means. And he's sitting here, he's saying, oh, we're going to start focus on rebuilding. And it's, to what point? Like, things aren't even over. There could be more pushback. There could be, like, this line in Ukraine has gone back and forth more times than a yo-yo at this point. But worth pointing out. And that, if it is the case, they do rebuild and there's still tensions and there's still stuff going on, it's all just going to get knocked down again. So we'll have to wait and see.
Ambassade canadienne ici à Kiev, ça va permettre à Ukrainiens peuvent accomplir avec leur
You know, you talked about never.
et partout en Ukraine.
Mr. President, if you could please, you know, you talked about never again, and we heard Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announce more supports, but had Canada answered your call for support earlier on, how many Ukrainian lives could have been saved?
We have been supporting them earlier on. Canada has been there since before 2007. We've been on training missions there. We've been training individuals there. How much earlier did they want us in there? Wow. Crazy.
Thank you. Indeed, most of the time we've dedicated to negotiating the situation in Ukraine as well as the temporary occupation of our territory by Russia, what needs to be done in order to deoccupy our territory and to save our people. People are very important as
that to have brave and alive Ukraine. І в цьому сенсі хочу вам сказати, що дійсно
And in this respect, I'd like to say that we are lacking heavy weapons. We've mentioned this, and I'm not going to go too much into details now. And I'm sure you're the journalists. You know how to use internet, and you know how to analyze the information. We all know which countries have the technical capabilities and have the weapons that fortunately is not used on the territory of those countries. Which countries can provide us with those weapons? We all know this. We are not talking not only about those countries who can provide us, but we're talking about those countries who can influence other countries that may be taking similar decisions. And I've talked to Justin as the leader of that country because Canada is assisting us. Canada will be mounting their support. And I'd like to say frankly that weapons can be different because of the war, because of the economic drop down. We have another need, that is the financial support. Financial support is also a sort of the money, and Canada has made a decision on allocating 1.5 billion of Canadian dollars. We've already received 0.5 billion Canadian dollars, and Canada is second after the United States in terms of the scope of assistance it's been providing to Ukraine. Speaking on weapons, I'm sure that the leader of Canada would be able to support us. Speaking on the sanctions policy,